pressed the let's go live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. We've got YouTube we're waiting for. We've got Rumble that we're waiting for. We've already been live over on Locals. We've been chatting for about 30 seconds. But we're live over on YouTube, which is great news. We've got Rumble, looks like that's alive and well. We're also on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And yes, as they sang on Local, 66 Antoine says, holy moly, you're like streaming all over the place, like crossing the streams. What happens if like that scene in Ghostbusters occurs and the streams get crossed? Remember what Bill Murray said, never cross the streams, but they're working. So that means we can go ahead and jump into it. Let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about prison and prisons. We've got several different things to attend to. Of course, we're going over to our mind map so that we can get our bearing straight, and that is not a sea in the middle of the ocean. But we are going to talk about the big news. We hit this on our morning walk and talk this morning, which I did make public. And so if you missed that, we talked a little bit about some of that this morning. That is about Bannon, Steve Bannon, War Room podcast host, but more sort of importantly, America's newest political prisoner, got sentenced to 4 months. And we're going to go through this in detail, including taking a look at the docket. There is sort of not much there, but we are going to go through and listen to Steve Bannon before he went into the proceeding. We're also going to go through several different tweet threads from Law and Crime and over from Reuters. Both of these two individuals were there. They had some good tweet threads, and so we'll pull both of those up and do the old side by side and see what we are looking at. We also have Bannon's response. He spoke for about 2 minutes after the sentencing hearing. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the consequences. You know, what is the deal here? Can Bannon appeal this? We've already spent a lot of time talking about that. But big update on Bannon, obviously. And not really great news. In our next segment, we've got another big whopper today. It's Friday, and they're really sort of letting him hang out today. But Donald Trump should be getting his brand new subpoena, courtesy of the fake, illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee. We were wondering when they were going to get around to drafting this puppy up, and apparently they have done that. So they posted it officially. We're going to go and look through all of it in its entirety. It's quite the document. They want everything. They want to know the last time, Trump got his, blood tested. It's ridiculous. It's insane. So we'll go through that. We also have a new report. The Biden administration and the DOJ, they are asking for $34 million now to continue to prosecute the J6 cases. So you know how much of a grueling task this is for them over there at the FBI. Never been able to handle 1,000 criminal cases before. Wow, shocking. Oh, we need $34 million. Wow. So they posted this new report that we'll take a look at. We've got Biden with some reaction saying that if the Republicans win, they're going to reverse all sorts of things. And he's sort of hitting the panic button for the Democratic name. Like for real. So we'll go and listen to our bumbling president. Before we finish up with our last segment, interesting little docket updates in the Mar-a-Lago case. And sort of not really, I'm not sure that they're good for the Trump side. Special Master Raymond Dearie says, you guys are late on your objections. Trump and his defense, they filed a notice. Remember yesterday we read through the notice about the Special Master, and the Special Master was saying, I need both of you to confer, and the things you disagree about, you let us know. Well, they submitted that yesterday, and now Trump's team says, actually, we disagree with the statement about our disagreements. So you're like, oh, great. And the judge said, well, look, you should have let us know yesterday, right? That was the deadline. But then he gave them a new deadline of tonight. So we'll check the docket. Before we wrap up, we have a very, very leaky DOJ, which sent some more stuff over to the Washington Post. And apparently Trump had some Chinese secrets there and Iranian secrets there. So I wonder if those are love letters also, just like those North Korean secrets were. Give me a break. So we'll have that segment. Trump responded to some of this stuff on True Social, which of course we'll take a look at. And so we're very excited to be here. Happy Friday, my friends. We are starting an hour earlier today because it's Friday. We're sort of wrapping things up early on the day. We had our first super chat come in today. Thank you, Oil Smoke Jones. He says, liberal lawfare reminds me of Reconstruction in the South after the Civil War, but Democrats now use lawfare instead of physical violence against opposition. Yes, and they're using sort of, all sorts of non-violent means that are, you could say legal, you could say cultural, you could say, educational, just go into the educational systems and wage the war there, wage the war on social media, wage the war in movies and TV shows, wage the war everywhere else except in the arena of ideas. Shut everybody else up, make them comply, shame them if they don't adhere to your perspective, and continue to win. We'll see how that works out for them. I'm not sure that it's going to continue to work. I think Americans are pretty fed up about it. But thank you, Oil Smoke Jones, for that super chat. And if you want to be a part of the show, my friends, the best place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community over there. That's our home base. We post morning videos. We do, before the show starts, we say hi after the show, though when we're done here. The show ends on YouTube, but the show is not over. I mean, it ends on YouTube, but it's not over at all. We just keep going on Locals. And so join us over there if you would like to continue the after party. But we are an hour early, and so if you missed us here today, I apologize for that. Sorry you couldn't make it. I also am a lawyer in Scottsdale, Arizona, at the R&R Law Group, criminal defense law firm. That's all that we do. We don't even, you call me, you say, hey, I've got a family law case. I want to get divorced. My wife, whatever. It's not for us. Criminal defense, that's all we do. And we have a mission to help good people who have been charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. And so we would love the opportunity to help. If you know anybody in the state of Arizona passing through or living here who's been in trouble, that's exactly what we do. Free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. And your referrals do keep us busy. All right, and we appreciate that. All right, and so let's cue this puppy up because we've got some headlines to attend to. And the one thing that I forgot to do before the show started is I wanted to open up a couple of these tweet threads so that we could cue these up and actually go through what was happening today, because there was a lot going on. And as usual, because these are federal courts, we can't actually see anything, right? They don't have cameras, they don't have transcripts. So we just have to sort of glean this stuff from third parties. But we're going to get this stuff queued up right here. Both of these Twitter threads from our two journalists. All right. And so now let's get into it. Steve Bannon, my goodness. America's newest political prisoner, Steve Bannon, just got sentenced to 4 months prison. Unless the Court of Appeals does something to reverse this, he may well see time. We're going to go through the proceedings today. We've got two reporters who are there and are reporting on this on Twitter. We'll go through their threads. Adam Klasfeld over from Long Crime and Sarah Lynch from Reuters. But this is the latest from the docket, and we'll just hit the headline first. This is the juicy bit. Minute entry from the judge, sentencing entered. It says proceedings were held before Judge Nichols. Sentencing on 10/21 as to Steve Bannon, counts 1 and 2. He was found guilty of both of those counts. These were the counts relating to, as we've called it, the fake illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee. They were supposed to have a certain number of members appointed. They don't have those members appointed. It was supposed to be 5 Republicans. There's only 2 of them. Kinzinger and Cheney are both going to be gone very soon. And in my opinion, it does not comply with H.R. 503, which was the House resolution that constituted this committee. They're supposed to have 13 members. They've got 9. It's not legal. Nevertheless, they sent Steve Bannon over subpoenas, one to show up and testify and another to produce documents. Bannon did not do that. He deferred to his lawyers. His lawyers raised a big issue, saying that one of Steve's defenses should be that he was relying on advice of counsel. This is going to be a very big appealable issue. It's certainly going to be the crux of the appeal when we get there, but we'll come back to that. Bannon ultimately did not show up in front of Liz Cheney, and they referred this over to Biden's DOJ, which is waging a political war against the MAGA crew, and it turned into criminal indictments for Bannon. Trial went forward. Bannon was precluded from having really any opportunity to defend himself. He wanted to subpoena the January 6th Select Committee to see what they knew, and in particular, how this had become politicized. Wasn't allowed to do that. Wanted to introduce a defense of I was relying on my legal counsel's defense. Wasn't allowed to do that. Even wanted to introduce documents saying this is what the DOJ memoranda says about all of this. Wasn't allowed to do that. Steve Bannon was in trial, but he didn't really put up a defense at all. And throughout the trial, the judge referenced a case called Licavoli, saying that maybe there is an appealable option there. We'll come back to that. The sentence from Judge Carl J. Nichols is as follows. Defendant is sentenced to 4 months incarceration to run concurrently, meaning simultaneously with one another. We use these two C words, either concurrently or consecutively in sentencing. Concurrently means they run together, so counts 1 and 2, 4-month sentences running concurrently. They're running together. If they were consecutive, then they would stack them back to back. They would be 4 months first on one count, and then 4 months on the other count for a total of 8 counts. Didn't do that. Defendant is further ordered to pay a fine of $6,500, and that's not much at all. In fact, Bannon was saying, I'll pay whatever you want. Even his lawyer said that. I'll pay $200,000, the max, no problem. Tip money, baby. And it was obviously not something that the judge bid on. The judge said, okay, well, money doesn't matter. So he imposed a very minute fine for, what we're talking about here. And instead hit him with prison, because that's what really matters. The money, okay, who cares? People who support Steve Bannon, I'm sure, would be happy to fund whatever the fine was. What's really powerful is removing Steve from the equation. Can you imagine 4 months of not having Steve Bannon out there chiming away about American politics, becoming a thorn in the side every day on War Room, beating the Democrats politically, peacefully, and patriotically every single day, day after day after day? Yeah, it's a big victory for him. So they'd love to see him sidelined. They also are assessing a special assessment of $25. They do this crap all over the place in criminal law. $12 for this, $13 for this, public safety fee, prison construction fund, whatever. $25 for him as well. Sentenced to 4 months incarceration. The bond status of the defendant, as we're going to see, he is released because, of course, he's going to be appealing this based on Licavoli, which is the case that is sort of is being contested right now out of the DC circuit. So we'll come back to that. Now, that is the latest on the docket. Steve Bannon, when he went into court, he had a message for the people. Prior to sentencing, Steve Bannon made an appearance outside of the courtroom, and he had a message for the American people and for the Chinese people.
Remember, this illegitimate regime, their judgment day is on 8 November. Biden administration. I want to thank you all for coming. Thanks. By the way, and remember, take down the CCP. Thank you.
Right on. Also, afterthought. I'm about to go in and be sentenced. It might involve federal prison, but also down with the CCP. Now, Steve Bannon's point on this about the Biden administration being sort of out of control very soon, I think is a very astute observation. And his main defense. Bannon, for a long time, I think, has just been sort of unconcerned, nonplussed about any of this stuff. Watching him day in, day out, different court proceedings, and he says regularly, no scam, no deal, take over the House, we'll take the Senate, and then we'll take the presidency, and after that, repercussions. It's like it's part of the defense. And I'm a little bit shocked about the whole thing because it sort of feels cavalier. Because in practice, we don't have option to our clients, generally speaking, it's never come up, maybe it will one day, of, winning the government of the United States over a good outcome. We have a lag on the see some buffer. Uh-oh. Buffer happening. Yeah, I was running into internet issues today. So just keep going. See, apologies for it. Sorry guys, if it's going to keep on going, if the internet's up and down. I had a whole session with the internet today. They fine. Obviously it's not fine. But we're just going to keep on going. But that is Steve Bannon, my friend. So before the statement went out, before Bannon went into court for the sentencing proceeding, that's what he had to say for us. Now, we're going to check in with the reports that came out from several people who were there, including Adam Klasfeld. So let's see what Adam Klasfeld had to say on our end. Adam Klasfeld says, this is on Steve Bannon. He says, good morning, everybody. We're down here in front of the courthouse. You can see that there was this blow-up rat outside of the courthouse for some reason. He says, we're about to begin. Introducing himself for the government is J.P. Cooney, and for the defense, David Schoen. U.S. District Court Judge Nichols, who was appointed by Trump, takes the bench. He's presiding over the case. And there are no witnesses who showed up before the sentencing proceeding. Judge Nichols, he turns over to the sentencing guidelines. And remember, as we've talked about, these are basically big charts, right? These are sort of big spreadsheets that exist. And both sides will use the spreadsheets and sort of bounce around from one chart to the other. The government will say this should go aggressively towards the most serious penalty. And the defense will turn around and say it should go towards the most mitigated, the most minimum penalty. And so we're sort of fighting around these charts. We're moving around these charts up, down, left, and right, trying to figure out how to settle on this. So Judge Carl Nichols, he comes out and he says, we're just talking right about the sentencing stuff. Let's check in and see what Sarah Lynch had for us to start things off. She was in court as well. And she says, well, she started off later, so we'll pick back up with her later. Now, Nichols takes the bench and he comes out and he says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, I have some preliminary findings. Recall that here on this channel, we read through both sentencing memoranda from both sides. And before somebody gets sentenced in a criminal case, there's typically 3 documents a judge looks at, one from the defense, which we read through, one from the prosecutor, which we also read through, and one from a pre-sentence draft writer, somebody typically from a probation department who's kind of like a neutral third party who is weighing both sides of this and sort of making an independent assessment that goes directly to the judge. So the judge then has a bunch of stuff that they've looked at the day before, right? Judge Nichols in this case is not coming into this thing cold. He knows exactly I would guess he knows exactly what he's going to do already. Most of this is just sort of for, final touches, finishing flourishes, rhetorical flourishes, and it's to sort of make your impassioned pitch. It's also to see if the defendant wants to say anything and to kind of finalize it. And so the judge probably knew what he was going to do, but left open the possibility of making a change. But both sides briefed their positions. They came out, they delivered those to Judge Nichols. We read through them all. And they say, Judge Nichols comes out. Okay, all right, everybody, before we get started here, I have some preliminary findings I'd like to share with you today. And I was going through the sentencing guideline calculations, including the severity of the offense and the different points. And he says, I was taking a look about this. I have to agree with the government. He says, Steve Bannon, in this case, he's expressed no remorse for his actions. And so that adjusts the chart. We move around the chart a little bit. Now, after the government finished, Bannon's lawyer, David Schoen, gets up. So the government didn't say much, but David Schoen gets up and he delivers a massive sentencing soliloquy. He says, Your Honor, the government applied the Bannon rule to my client. He was treated differently than many other defendants who've been similarly situated. Schoen is arguing that there's no mandatory minimum. He says what we have seen here is that this is more analogous to a misdemeanor. And if you take a look at this statute, U.S. Code Section 192, there is a penalty calling for common jail. And that means that we don't have to go to prison. So if we're analogizing this towards a different part of the law, then we can get a different part of a penalty. The other statute that he was charged under, it has a mandatory minimum. But because of the conduct, he's saying we can look at a different part of the sentencing and analogize it over to a different outcome. But Judge Nichols says, well, hold on a minute. I mean, okay, you're telling me to go to a different provision. That's fine. But if that is a minimum, then isn't it a minimum? Is that maximum not a maximum then? So he goes, okay, so if you're saying I can give him probation, can I also give him 30 years in prison? I mean, the statute says it's got a minimum and a maximum. You're saying I can go beyond the minimum. Can I also go beyond the maximum? So a judge is saying, all right, sort of playing around with the rules a little bit. And Nichols turns around and he says, well, no, Judge, obviously not. And so he's sort of pointing out a contradiction there a little bit. Nichols says, I don't buy it. Judge says, no, I agree. The judge says, the statutory minimum and the maximums apply. The government's right on this thing. We're going to just apply it as written. Schoen says that they've argued in the past as to why the mandatory minimum doesn't apply. Nichols says, hey, pipe down over there. You've made your argument. You've preserved it. It's on the record, and I reject it. So stop bringing it up. The government came out and said, Judge, we think 6 months is appropriate, and we also ask for $200,000. Prosecutor takes the podium. He says, Your Honor, why do we feel this is appropriate? Simple. The importance of this case has everything to do with the defendant Bannon's obligations as a citizen of the United States. Saying he chose to bring up this, he's saying that he chose to hide behind a fabricated claim of executive privilege and the advice of counsel excuse. And then he thumbed his nose at Congress. Prosecutor says, Your Honor, Bannon is not above the law. So the judge turns back to the prosecutor and he says, okay, well, would this have been different if Bannon did have valid executive privilege, Mr. Prosecutor? I mean, you want to punish him, but what if he did have executive privilege? Prosecutor says, no, this would not have been different. Judge says, well, why not? Well, the prosecutor says, well, that's because if Bannon had a valid claim, he would have shown up. Prosecutor says, throughout this case, he has acted like he's above the law. He is not. That principle should apply, he says, to those convicted of crimes, regardless of their means, regardless of their station, regardless of the influence of their friends. All right, so this is just typical prosecutor garbage. Justice and the law, nobody's above the law, and it's travesty, and we're all angry, and whiner, that's all they do. Big, whiny bunch of babies. So they say the same thing in basically every sentencing. It's like a script. They're all programmed robots over there. But Adam Klasfeld is reporting for law and crime on the Bannon sentencing proceeding. And he tells us that Corcoran is now up. Bannon's defense lawyer takes the podium and he says that he starts speaking. He addressed a discrete legal issue very briefly, and then he's gone. Doesn't even get a tweet. Darn it. So Schoen comes up now. And so Schoen, as we have seen him before, he's a very passionate guy. He represented Trump in one of the second impeachment trial, and we've seen a lot of him. And I think that's how you say his name. I'm not positive, though. Now, he says, Mr. Bannon should be treated like any other citizen, equal protection of the law, as it were. Schoen claims that he hasn't been, repeating the same argument that his client followed the advice of his lawyer. This is the Licavoli case, which is going to be appealed. But Schoen, as Adam sort of emotively conjugates for us, he's going with a closing pitch of remorselessness. So Adam, Adam is I don't think he's a Steve Bannon fan. We'll just leave it at that. He says, it's a case in which, quite frankly, Mr. Bannon should make no apology. This is Schoen arguing on behalf of Bannon. He says, Your Honor, there is nothing even here to deter. There's nothing here to punish. If you're trying to deter Bannon's conduct, well, that would run counter to constitutional principles. Why? because Bannon was only following the advice of his lawyer. And we want people to follow the advice of their lawyer. Why? Because people are entitled to their lawyer. Thank you, U.S. Constitution. So if Bannon is doing that and he's working with his licensed lawyers and they're telling him that we advise you to do this, that, and the other thing because we're relying on DOJ memoranda, we're relying on case precedent, we're relying on all sorts of other legal authorities in order to come up with our conclusions. And you can trust us because we're your counsel. Bannon takes that advice, and that is not allowed even in as a defense because of precedent in this case called Licavoli. Now, Judge Carl J. Nichols, this judge who did the sentence, throughout this trial, he made the point numerous times saying that he thinks that that standard is wrong. The Licavoli standard is wrong, saying that you cannot use that defense, the advice of counsel defense. Judge Nichols confirmed that. He says, if it goes up and they reverse this, I would probably agree with the reversal, but it's the law. I can't do anything about it now. And so therefore, Bannon, sorry, you didn't get to make the argument. So Bannon had to sit on his hands and present no defense at all. So Schoen comes out and he says, hey, Bannon was just doing the thing that he should be doing. And we're punishing him for this? And you see that Klasfeld says Bannon's legal arguments have been roundly rejected by the presiding Trump-appointed judge, which I disagree with. I don't think that is actually true. The judge has said that, yes, you can't use that argument. Yes, it is true. It has been rejected, but the way he phrases it here makes it seem like those arguments are without merit. That's not true at all. The judge has said specifically that this might be an appealable issue that comes back down and reverses this whole thing. But Schoen continues. He says, Your Honor, Bannon was just doing what the Constitution, what he understood the Constitution permitted him to do, and he was working with lawyers about this. His lawyers were sending letters back and forth. It wasn't like Bannon got these subpoenas and put them on an email server and then deleted them. He didn't do that at all. He was actually responding to them and sending them back and forth. He was communicating with people over these things. But he gets charged with crimes. Schoen continues. He says, that's the kind of conduct that you should encourage in this country, relying on your lawyer. He says, and by the way, the January 6th committee is a partisan political agenda with no interest in investigation, which is actually 100% true. It is a political body, illegally constituted, that is going after political opponents with token Republicans who are not even going to be there next year. Schoen continues, he says, quite passionately, and Judge Nichols is scribbling notes, looking expressionless, playing that poker face, going through this very slowly. He continues. Schoen says, Your Honor, this is an outrageous overreach of the prosecution. He's looking around at the audience and he stops himself as he references James Madison, probably from the Federalist Papers, talking about the separation of powers. Schoen says, Madison went on to discuss, and he's probably quoting at length from them. He says, this won't go on too long, Your Honor. But he talks about his resume representing Democrats, saying, Judge, I've worked for both sides. There's been people on both wings of this political spectrum that I've represented. And it's not supposed to be political. But this one is. These prosecutors are trying to make Steve Bannon their trophy. Says it's not deterring behavior. One of the points of sentencing somebody, one of the goals of the criminal justice system is to reform behavior. And how do we do that? We punish somebody to create a deterrence effect so they don't do it again. You get charged with a DUI, Arizona, you spend a day in jail. Our law firm can help you with that. But if you go to jail, the theory is you don't like it and you don't do it again. Here, they're saying Bannon was doing everything correctly. He was literally doing it by the book. He got a subpoena from a fake, illegally constituted garbage committee. He hired lawyers. He took it over to the DOJ. went to their website, for example, got the memoranda, got the precedent, and did what his lawyers told him to do. You want to deter people from doing that? You want to tell people don't do that, just sort of act like lunatics and just, I don't know, show up to, government partisan hack committees? That's not America. The lawyer claimed here, showing that Bannon took a principled stand and Bannon followed his lawyer's advice. The judge interrupts him. He says, okay, well, what if Mr. Costello, Bannon's lawyers, who was representing him at the time, what if he had produced non-privileged documents? You know, he said executive privilege was a thing and he couldn't talk because of executive privilege, but what if there was other documents that he could have turned over there, right? Couldn't that have resolved some of this stuff? And the judge says, he hasn't done that, right? No non-privileged documents have been over there. And he says, correct. Let me explain that. He says, I've said before in this situation that where a defendant acts on principle and reasonable, valid principle, judge, he doesn't deserve a punishment. Now, the message to the public is that executive privilege is important and I must honor it. And Bannon's saying, I'm not above that law. He says that the government has lied, flat out lied, to get Mr. Costello's telephone records. Referring to Bannon's other lawyer, he says that's a lie to a federal judge. That means the integrity of this process. And he says that this committee, the one that issued the subpoena, is a purely partisan political body, and that his client is speaking the truth about the illegitimate committee, which is true. Schoen continues. He says there's a government memo saying that there's no greater contempt than Bannon's. A more egregious contempt of Congress would have been, screw you, Congress, take your subpoena and shove it, is what Bannon says. Now, Schoen finishes. Nichols, the judge, gave Bannon an opportunity to speak. Bannon says, thank you, Your Honor. My lawyers have spoken for me. Short recess. The court comes back. Judge Nichols is now out. He takes the bench. All rise. Please be seated. Judge Nichols speaks. He says, the events of January 6 were undeniably serious. He talks about the rioters. He says many people used violence against law enforcement officers and they engaged in vandalism. The January 6th committee, thus, has every reason to investigate what happened that day or what they caused that day or whatever. Nichols continues. He says, Mr. Bannon, however, has not produced a single document to the committee. And at the time of the subpoena, Bannon was a private citizen who was not employed. And he hadn't been in the executive branch for several years. And even though in July of this year, former President Trump removed the executive privilege barrier, Bannon still didn't produce the documents. And this cuts in favor of a substantial sentence. The judge continues. He says, I know that Bannon did find a lawyer. And although his counsel's advice may have been overly aggressive or misguided, he says, yeah, this is an argument in his favor. Nichols goes through the biography. He says, okay, Bannon, he's done a bunch of this. He's done a naval service. He's worked over at Breitbart. He went to Harvard. He's a smart guy. He's accomplished all sorts of stuff. No criminal history at all. We went through all of that yesterday. And he also worked for Trump. That's the fatal flaw. The judge continues. And as I stated earlier, though, despite all of that very impressive pedigree, Mr. Bannon has not taken responsibility for his actions. So Nichols, the judge, says, I find that general deterrence to dissuade this stuff is more important than specific deterrence. So the public needs to know, rather than Bannon needs to know, We're going to punish Bannon so everybody else out there knows you better show up when the January 6th Select Committee sends you a note, lest you too be convicted and sentenced to 4 months prison. Bannon says, respect for Congress is, of course, an important piece of our constitutional system. And that's why I am sentencing you to 4 months of prison from Judge Nichols. Now we have a little bit more from Sarah Lynch, who closes it out for us as well. And she adds a little bit more flavor to the closing statement of Judge Nichols. Nichols returns from his chambers and takes the bench and says Bannon has not provided any documents, and said that as a private citizen, he was even less likely to have privilege. He says there were some records for where there was no conceivable claim of executive privilege, and maybe he could have given them those documents. And while his counsel's advice was overly aggressive, it's not enough. The judge says the committee did not attempt to sue Bannon civilly. Instead, the committee moved quickly to hold him in contempt and pursue criminal prosecution. And Bannon has not ever accepted responsibility for any of this, but he has been compliant with the conditions of his release. Every time we've told him to come back, he has. Every time he's told us to update him about his whereabouts, he has. But flaunting congressional subpoenas betrays a lack of respect for the legislative branch. Oh, okay. Is that a crime? Really? And so he says 4 months in prison if you don't respect your Congress, a fine of $6,500. But Bannon does not need to go into custody right now. Will delay the imposition of the sentence if he files a notice of appeal on time, or else he has to self-surrender to the Bureau of Prisons in mid-November. Completed, reported by both Adam Klasfeld at Law and Crime and Sarah Lynch at Reuters, giving us the details from the sentencing hearing. And so 4 months, obviously, is a big prison sentence, not one that many were expecting. After the sentencing proceeding, Steve Bannon addressed the public. Of course, he is getting 4 months in prison unless the Court of Appeals does something to reverse this, but he doesn't seem perturbed. He's got a big message for the Biden administration and the American people.
My direction.
Yeah. Hang on. I want to, by the way, I want to say one thing. I respect the judge. The sentence he came down with today is his decision. I fully respect. I've been totally respectful of this entire process on the legal side. I also want to make one other statement before I talk about a broader topic. More than any person in the Trump administration, I testified before the Mueller Commission for more hours. I testified in front of Chair Schiff in the House Intelligence Committee more than any other person in the Trump administration. I testified in front of the Senate Intelligence, I think more than any, all about the issues related to Russiagate and to all of that, okay? The same process every time. I had lawyers that were engaged. They worked through the issues of privilege, and at that time, I went and testified. And this thing about I'm above the law is an absolute and total lie. Now, more importantly,
Bannon saying, I've testified many times. I've got no problem testifying. We go through the formalities. My lawyers tell me what to do, and I do it. They told me in this case not to do it. Why? Because of executive privilege and all of the other precedent that was established by the DOJ and the FBI and all of the other case law that supports it. And he has a track record to support that. Mueller and others. Happy to talk to you people when it's legitimate, when it's not a political, partisan hack.
More importantly, the judge, today was my judgment day by the judge. and he stated for the appeal. And we'll have a very vigorous appeals process. I've got a great legal team, and there'll be multiple areas of appeal. But as that sign says right there, can we have the vote sign? On November 8th, on November 8th, there's going to have judgment on the illegitimate Biden regime, and quite frankly, that Nancy Pelosi and the entire committee. And we know which way that's going. Either they've already been turfed out, like Liz Cheney, right, or have quit, like Kinzinger and other the Democrats.
Bye.
Or they're about to be beaten like Luria and others, or they will lose their power and become a minority, and Nancy Pelosi and Chairman Thompson, all of it. This is democracy. This is democracy. The American people are weighing and measuring what went on with the Justice Department and how they comported themselves. They're weighing and measuring that right now, and they will vote on November 8th. They will hang on. They will vote. Hang on. They will know. They will know. Can I go ahead and finish? Can I? Thanks. On November 8th, the American people will raise judgment, and we will broom. The Biden administration ends on the 8th evening of the 8th of November. And some other thing is that the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, will end up being the first Attorney General that's brought up on charges of impeachment, and he'll be removed from office. Thank you very much.
Steve Bannon saying Steve Bannon saying one way to fight back against all of this is to go vote November 8th. It's going to be a big changing of the guard if the Republicans are successful. That happens very soon, early next year. And what happens to the January 6th Select Committee when that transpires? They're not in charge anymore. Do the Republicans continue with it? Of course they don't. And Steve Bannon says that when that happens, the runway is clear. The right people take over, the investigations switch as the pendulum swings, and America sees justice. Of course, we will continue to cover this and follow Steve Bannon and the rest of the political prosecutions that are taking place all across America, unfortunately. I do hope you continue to follow and join us wherever it is you are watching us here today. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, now speaking of other political prosecutions, we've got a January 6th Select Committee subpoena to talk about. And we have the full document. Let's make sure we've got that one pulled up. Oh, there it is. Do we have our pen handy? No, we do not have our red pen handy, which is, it's always a faux pas when that happens. Got to make sure that that's ready to go. And we got to increase the thickness so that we can see it, But we've got that now situated. And we've got to get into this one because of Nightbot. I got to get rid of Nightbot. I forgot to do that. We'll do that soon. I'll try to hit that this weekend. Hey, we have 1337 viewers on. That's elite, right? Not on YouTube, but somewhere else. All right, so let's get right into it. The illegally constituted fake January 6th Select Committee finally did it. They sent Donald Trump a subpoena, and I think he's just going to enjoy it for a minute, just like he's enjoying that piece of pizza back from the 90s. We're going to go through the subpoena its entirety. The January 6th Select Committee posted this October 21st, 2022, and they're very official. They have a blue checkmark Twitter account labeled @J6 Committee, blah, blah, blah. They said, pursuant to a unanimous vote, as though anybody believes it's even a possibility to not be unanimous on this fake illegal committee. They say the Select Committee issued a subpoena to former President Donald Trump for testimony and records related to the investigation into the J6 attack that almost wrecked America. And we've covered several other subpoenas here on this channel, many of them. They've gone out to everybody right after January 6th happened. And we covered a lot of them. But this one is the big one. This is what they've been waiting for. And very conveniently, this nonpartisan, non-political committee, the thing that is only interested in justice in America, they dropped it on October 21st. Like a few weeks away from a national election where they're about to get blown out. So let's go through it in detail. We know we've got our red pen ready to rock and roll, and so let's hit it. The January 6th Select Committee sends a subpoena with this nice cover letter right over to President Donald Trump, saying, "Dear President Trump, the United States House of Representatives, H.R. 503, which in our opinion is not being legally followed at the current moment. It demands a certain composition of the committee. It is not being followed. It demands 5 Republicans. It's not. It's got 2 Republicans. That it's not in comportment with H.R. 503 is a big problem because it's the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be representative. So if the committee is not representative of the bodies, then it's not legally constituted." But I could digress on this for an hour. It continues. It says, "Dear Mr. Trump, our garbage committee has been created to investigate the J6 attack. And pursuant to that directive, we have interviewed more than 1,000 witnesses. We have reviewed over 1 million documents. We've conducted public hearings and done major book reports for the American people for the last 18 months. We can't let this go." And they say, "We have vindicated our rights in court against those who try to keep information secret from the Select Committee." We also know that they just convicted Steve Bannon, and he's going to be getting 4 months in prison for this. So they're feeling pretty good about it. They're feeling pretty confident. They just sent somebody, basically the big dog, the main man, the top person who was contesting them loudly and provocatively on his radio show. They got him. They're feeling pretty good about it. So of course they're going to turn around and carry this, parlay it over into Trump. "As demonstrated in our hearings," writes Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, "we've assembled overwhelming evidence, including dozens of your former employees and staff, like the woman who said that Trump almost broke the Secret Service clavicle. Yeah, she's really credible. And you personally orchestrated and oversaw a multi-part effort to overturn blank and to obstruct the peaceful transition of power." They say that the multi-part effort included, but was not limited to, false allegations about what happened, attempting to interfere with the Department of Justice, including enlisting department officials to aid in the overturning. They say that without any evidentiary basis, you illegally pressured state officials and legislators to change the results, and you orchestrated and you oversaw efforts to transmit false electoral certificates to Congress and the National Archives. And despite knowing that all of this was illegal, you corruptly pressured your own vice president, Mike Pence, to count the electoral votes. And they say that pressuring members of Congress to object is also something you did. You filed false information under oath in federal courts. You summoned tens of thousands of supporters to Washington, knowing they were very angry, and some were armed, sending them to the Capitol. See that line? Some were armed. Okay. Sending a social media message to the nation at 2:24 p.m., while knowing full well that the violent attack was occurring to incite further violence, and refusing for hours to disband your rioting supporters by instructing them to leave. They say, all while you watch this unfold. The committee continues. They say, you took all these actions despite the rulings of more than 60 courts rejecting your election fraud claims and other challenges to the legality of the election. And despite having specific info from the DOJ, your senior staff told you that you were wrong. And you were at the center, they say, of the first and the only effort by any U.S. president to overturn any election. And it culminated, look at this, in a bloody attack at our own Capitol. Okay. They say that this evidence demonstrates that you knew this activity was illegal and unconstitutional, and you knew it was false. But to be clear, even if you now claim that you actually believed your own claims, that's not a defense, because this was not excusable or legal. They write, because of your central role in each element of these actions, the Select Committee unanimously directed the issuance of a subpoena to get your testimony. It calls for testimony about dealings with multiple individuals who've now invoked their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. People like Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, Kelly Ward. They've all asserted their Fifth Amendment privileges directly relating to you and your conduct, Trump. And they say that there are specific examples of all of this. They confirm that they want information from him. They say, we've identified topics that we think you have information about, and we are considering multiple legislative recommendations. That's how they're sort of getting over this, you're not supposed to prosecute from Congress, prosecute political enemies, which is kind of what they're doing. That's supposed to be the DOJ. But they're saying now that we're also investigating potential legal remedies, legislative solutions, so this doesn't happen again, which gives them cover to do all of this garbage. And they say, this is intended to assure that this never happens again. Your testimony and your evidence would inform our ongoing work. Now, they recognize, they say, Trump, we recognize that a subpoena to a former president is a significant and a historic action. We do not take this action lightly. But as you likely know, you would not be the first president to testify before Congress. Others have done that. Adams, Tyler, Roosevelt, Taft, Hoover, Truman, others. Roosevelt explained that says an ex-president is merely a citizen of the U.S. Even sitting presidents like Lincoln and Ford also testified, they say. So has Nixon, Tyler, and Adams. And as we talked about previously, I would love for Donald Trump to show up there and testify. I think Donald Trump would love to show up there and testify. I think most of MAGA would love for Donald Trump to show up and testify. But legally, not ideal. The committee continues in their rant. They say this subpoena hereby orders the production of materials set forth by November 4th, followed by your participation in one or more days of deposition by November 14th. When's that election deadline again? When are the elections? Midterm elections. It's November 8th. Yeah. So November 4th is, very convenient. So they want to kind of squeeze this in a little bit, right? Before the elections. Wow, very weird. And then after the elections, they want to come back for depositions. They say the deposition is going to be under oath and it's going to be led by professional staff, including multiple federal prosecutors who were former DOJ, as well as members, with all the witnesses who were required to appear before the committee. You may raise any privileges during your deposition, and if other witnesses are identified above, you intend to invoke your Fifth Amendment rights, please let us know about that. So you see how they want this deposition. I don't know if they're not talking about this being open or behind closed doors or what, but it sort of feels to me like they want this to be private. Likewise, for any document described in the schedule, let us know if you have any objections. We'll let you know if we think it's valid. We recognize the Supreme Court has ruled that former presidents do have some limited executive privilege, but we'll be the judges of that. The attached schedule, they say, narrowly focuses on records in your custody that we want, and we look forward to your cooperation. And we need this stuff in light of your multi-part effort to overturn the results and interfere with the peaceful transition of power. The Select Committee looks forward to hearing from you. Signed by Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, who just lost her election by 40 points. All right, well, let's see what the schedule looks like. These are the materials they want from Donald Trump in his new subpoena. The schedule details the following. They say, Donald Trump, guess what? We want it all. Everything in your possession or your control. Everything, including computers, cell phones, tablets, email accounts, contact lists, calendar entries. Anything that you have ever touched is now ours because we are the government, including all telephone calls, text messages, communications sent through Signal. All records of phone calls also sent through Signal between December 18, 2020 and December 6, 2021. Photographs taken on January 6th near the rally. Any records of anything else also done on Signal from that same time period. Electronic and handwritten notes, any memoranda, summaries, readouts, other documents you received relating to the riot. We want all materials relating to the Oath Keepers or Proud Boys, anything even closely connected. From September 1 to January 20th, communications sent to state legislatures, other local officials, other electors, or anybody else you were communicating with. They want all documents, all communications sent through Signal about the vice president. Anything about the DOJ, including actions, statements, all correspondence between everybody involved there. All documents and communications relating to Mike Pence and his role. Anything about Scott Perry, the representative, or other members of Congress, and efforts to encourage individuals to travel, right? So travel logs, send all of that stuff over as well. If you filed any lawsuits, petitions, motions, and communicated about those, let us know. And some of this is coming from the case against John Eastman. To the extent not already discussed in other paragraphs here, they also want every single thing that you've ever said to any of these people. Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, Jeffrey Clark, John Eastman, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro, Boris Epstein, Christina Bobb, Trump's lawyer and custodian of records, Cleta Mitchell, and Patrick Byrne. All documents they want relating to litigation losses involving the 2020 election. All documents and communications involving efforts to contact witnesses who might be expected to appear before the select committee. So they're saying, right, did you do any pre-communications before the select committee got rolling? You know, did you communicate with Cassidy Hutchinson, for example, before she went out there and told her little Secret Service helicopter clavicle fairy tale? Because if you did, we want to know those communications. Anything that you sent to White House staff, counsel represented by those witnesses, let us know about those. Anything like offers to pay legal fees, anything about finding witnesses, communications with Deputy Chief of Staff of the Secret Service, Tony Ornato. Conversations from November 3rd to January 6th about fundraising, about efforts to fundraise on the back of a lost election. Any documents that you destroyed or ordered to be destroyed, we want those. And any other information relevant to identify every telephone or other communications device you use. Okay, so we want to know every single device you touched. It is like it's like an audit, right, of his entire life, because they're the fake January 6th Select Committee, and that's just what they do. That's the sheet. This is the official subpoena going to Donald Trump. By authority of the House of Representatives, Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States, is hereby commanded to appear before the Select Committee to investigate the J6 attack on the Capitol. You're also ordered to appear at the date, time, and location located below United States House of Representatives, the Longworth House Office Building, November 4th at 10 a.m., just a few days before the election. And you are to produce the things identified on the attached schedule that we just read through, and you are not to depart without our permission. You're also, as you can see, this first checkbox says, bring all of those documents. The second checkbox says you're also going to talk to us. You're going to testify at a deposition. Anything that touches the matters of inquiry that we just detailed in the document. And on that time, you are going to be at the U.S. Capitol building. So they would be at the Capitol building, but would that be in a public forum? Would this be in the Senate chamber or the House chamber? We don't know. That would be on November 14th. But I would love to see Donald Trump just right in there and do it. Or he can show up by video conference. But it's going to be a deposition. Yeah, not going to be a hearing. So you see they have a separate form here for the hearing. They don't want it to be public because they're cowards. If they wanted him to testify publicly, they would have filled this out, but they don't because they're cowards. They wanted to testify by a video conference so they can have a bunch of prosecutors ask him a bunch of questions. What a joke. This is like literally a joke of a committee. It's so embarrassing. There's no adversarial proceedings there. There's nothing about any of this. It's just one political hit job after another. They sent this over to any person of the United States Marshal Service approved October 21st by Benny Thompson. Send this over to Donald Trump. The committee passed a resolution directing Chairman Benny Thompson to issue a subpoena to Donald Trump. Be it resolved, it's hereby directed to subpoena Donald Trump in connection with the J6 committee and H.R. 503, which is not even being followed, is the basis for their authority, even though that is not even legally constituted. The committee is not even legally constituted. But okay, so that's the committee, the select committee sending the subpoena over to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, of course, is going to respond to that. We'll see what that looks like when he does. And we'll continue to cover that. The DOJ, meanwhile, is asking for more money. I think I queued this one up. They want $37 million for the J6 prosecution. So let me share this with you. Here it is. Yeah. The U.S. Department of Justice just released their fiscal year 2023 budget requests. And let's take a look at what they want. A lot more money to prosecute the January 6 crimes. You can see that this is coming out from the United States Attorney's Office, and they're telling us that for fiscal year 2023, they want $2.7 billion. Oh my gosh. 12,000 new positions. And a big portion of that, let's see where this goes. All this money, where is it going to go? We scroll down. We learn more about this. You can see how they run these things, right? This is the actual Department of Justice. They run their sort of entities like a business, and they treat people like they're just numbers, and they just push them through the sausage factory. The Department of Justice wants more money for the Capitol Hill prosecutions. Of all the dollars they're asking for, they say that the budget is $2.7 billion bucks. But in 2023, they want more. The increases to the programs are detailed below. Violent crime prosecutions getting another $31 million bucks for violent crimes. Cyber initiatives, $15 million bucks. E-litigation modernization, $26 million. White collar crimes, $2 million. $8 million here for civil rights initiatives. But what is this one? Oh my goodness. Capital prosecutions. Funding is going to be used for an additional team of prosecutors, additional associated litigation support to address the magnitude and the complexity of the caseloads resulting from January 6th and the breach of the Capitol. Are you joking me? There's like 1,000 cases. This has been going on for 2 years. They're asking for $34 million to do this. $34 million. I've explained that any local big city prosecutor's office churns through 1,000 cases like butter. It's nothing. Wherever you have the Super Bowl, there's going to be an extra 1,000 cases of criminal charges. Just automatically, wherever it is. And do you see local governments flipping out about, we need more money, $34 million, magnitude, complexity, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of criminal trespass cases and assault cases with water bottles. That's it. Okay. Not even any weapons. So it's a joke. They know it's a joke. We all should know it's a joke. The money that they are devoting to this is laughable, but it's not about the criminal prosecutions. It's about waging war on political enemies. It's not about these specific prosecutions, of course. It's way bigger than that. They want to go after an entire political party, and they're well on the way to do it. Joe Biden's out. The president has a new term. He's calling Republicans mega MAGA now, which is new. We're familiar with the ultra MAGA, but now we have mega MAGA, ultra mega extremist insurrection Republicans.
I'm not going to stop there. They're going to do big pharma's bidding to repeal my plan to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drugs prices. We pay the highest in the world. And in doing so, it's going to raise drug prices. And they're going to raise big pharma's profits. They're doing fine, big pharma. They're not hurting at all. And they're going to raise your health insurance premiums. It's mega, MAGA trickle down.
Mega, MAGA.
Mega, MAGA trickle down. The kind of policies that have failed the country before and will fail it again. And it'll mean more wealth to the very wealthy, higher inflation for the middle class. That's the choice we're facing. That's why I think that we're going to do just fine. Thank you.
You're not there, Joe. Not going to do so hot, and they're all sort of freaking out about it. But the mega, MAGA, ultra, prime, plus Republicans are responsible for everything. It's not Joe Biden. It's not him printing a bunch of money. It's not him devoting huge swaths of his political capital to stupid things like the January 6th committee. It's not him prosecuting his political opponents. It's about the mega, MAGA, ultra Republicans, or whatever the current title is for them. But Biden is, he's having a tough time. So are a lot of his constituents. People are so concerned about the president's policies that Biden is now encouraging them not to jump off the balcony during his own speeches.
And I didn't even see all of it. I didn't see the bleachers up there. Hey, everybody. Don't jump. Don't jump.
Eesh. Yeah, things are bad. So bad that when they're talking about student aid at student loan speeches, Biden's encouraging people, don't end it. Don't bail out, right? It's going to be okay. Hang on tight. The Republicans are going to be in charge soon. Don't you worry about it. So that is the latest on the Donald Trump subpoena. Of course, his defense team is going to respond to that. When they do, we will certainly cover it. And we hope that you join us as we find out what comes next. There's going to be a lot more. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. And we have one final segment. And this one I saved for last because I wanted to check the docket on this one. The docket ordered a response by, there it is. There it is. This one came flying in here. Yeah, okay. This one came flying in here. And it wasn't there when I started because the judge ordered it done like today. Okay, so this is going to make a lot more sense. Let me cue this one up because she was ordered to get this done by the end of the day, and she got it done, obviously. So let's cue this up so that we can talk about it. I wasn't sure if it was going to hit the docket, but Lindsay Halligan, it looks like, got it in 4 pages. All right, so we'll come back to that in a quick second. But let's understand what's happening because you can see there was a lot going on. The Trump Mar-a-Lago saga continues. Special Master Raymond Dearie getting a little irritated, issuing some deadlines and making the Trump defense move quickly. We're going to talk about this. Here is Trump's defense notice. And you might be asking yourself, what is this document? I mean, we've previously covered the various documents that have been flying all over the place in this case. And prior to today, there was another joint document that was submitted by the government prosecutors. And they said, Judge Special Master Raymond Dearie, we have our list of our disputed entries. Remember, they took dozens of boxes out of Trump's residence. The prosecution says we're entitled to everything. Trump says, no, you're not. We have privilege over this, or we have executive authority over these materials, or these are declassified, or whatever. But there was a disagreement about a whole list of materials. Special Master Raymond Dearie said, get together, you two people, hash it out, put it together in a big list and send that into the court. They did that. That deadline was ordered by October 20th. And we read through that entirely. We read through the joint message that hit the docket. Well, the problem is Trump's defense says it wasn't accurate. So the judge, Special Master Raymond Dearie, ordered both sides get together, smash your heads, write up a joint memo, send in the joint memo telling me what you both have agreed to, and then I'll take it from there. But Trump's team says that what the prosecutors filed isn't accurate. So they had to agree about the disputes, but now they are having disputes about the agreement about the disputes. Do you understand how complicated this is getting now? It's like inception levels of dispute. Let's take a look at the actual document. because this is what happened from Trump's team. I'm trying to think about the order I want to do this. And let's hit it this way. This is the first letter that came in, and so let's cue this one up. Trump's defense team files a letter over to Judge Raymond Dearie. You can see drafted October 20th. October 20th is the deadline to submit some final objections. But the deadline is not met. It's a 2-page document. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense here. Yeah, okay, so let's take a look here. This is from James Trusty, not from Christina Bobb. Trump's lawyer, James Trusty, sends a letter to Raymond Dearie. It's regarding the filter document team's update. He says, "Dear Judge, as noted in our prior submission that we read through yesterday, the parties met and conferred about the filter documents that we talked about on October 19th. Up until we got receipt of the government's October 20th filing, we anticipated there would be a joint submission and an exchange between the parties preceding that joint submission to confirm both parties' positions." Uh-oh. This means that they say, we didn't see that document that the prosecutors filed with you. They sent in the spreadsheet and they said, this is what we agreed on. But Trump's defense says, we didn't agree to those things that they sent to you, Judge. He says, ordinarily, the way that we've dealt with this in the past is they draft up a document. They send the document over to us. We say, yes, we've got to change here or change there. And then we send it back to them. And then they send it to you. That didn't happen. We just had a meeting. They drafted something up and they just filed it. And they said, we see it now. And now we object. He says, we're supposed to be having a joint submission and to confirm both of our positions. He says that's consistent with the process that was undertaken for the October 3rd joint submission with the filter team. Instead, the government filed its own log and it presented its legal positions on the documents for which there was a dispute between the parties. So they say, unfortunately, the log submitted by the government is not fully accurate as to our positions on various things. And so in light of these facts, Trump will file our position on the documents that remain in dispute by the close of business on October 24th, several days from the deadline. Now, the deadline, I believe I was mistaken about. I think the deadline was actually on the 19th. And so I want to pull that up and sort of, what is going on here? Okay, so I don't really know what I did, but my browser's all a little bit wonky. Okay, so this is the latest update from James Trusty. Sent that into the court, and when we go back over, what the heck is going on here? There it is. Okay, so I had to put my tabs back on top. Something wasn't working. All right. It's been a weird technology day here today. But that is Trump's defense and his notice. Now, what happened was Judge Raymond Dearie came out and he said, that's not good enough for me. I need something from you a lot more quickly. And here's what that order looks like. So, Special Master Raymond Dearie responded and he said, look, Trump, I got your letter. I know you say that you were unhappy with what the prosecutors submitted to us, but to the extent that you say it's not fully accurate, any submission is now untimely pursuant to my order from October 7th, which said you have to submit your final positions by October 20th. Therefore, you have until no later than today, no later than the close of business today, which is October 21st, to submit your position. So previously, this was the order that the prosecutor submitted, and we talked about this yesterday, but just so everybody can sort of see it. This is what the government sent in. They said, hey, we met. This is our final answer. This is the list. Trump says this, and we say this. And they submitted all of this. Now, what we were reading through yesterday was this was their version of their sort of story, right? They gave us these 4 reasons why they say Trump is wrong, but they didn't include any reasons from the defense. They just said, these are our positions. And when we were reading through this yesterday, I thought that is a little bit weird. You know, they're not representing Trump's position. I was wondering if we were going to see Trump file something on top of this, but they were sort of running out of time. So they did. They actually did file. They say, we were expecting to get a copy of this before it got filed. They have all these reasons why Trump is wrong. We haven't had any opportunity to say why Trump is right and why they're wrong. And so the special master said, well, I don't know what you got confused about, but I said everything was due by the 20th. And so you've got by the close of business today, the 21st, to get it in. And it looks like they did do that. So let's take a look at now this document. Trump lawyers submit the letter to Special Master Raymond Dearie on October 21st. They skid it in late on a Friday. They say, Dear Judge Dearie, as articulated in your Special Master's order, we were supposed to confer and resolve these disputes. Now we have done that. And we have an updated log about the disputes for these documents, all the different boxes. Trump's lawyers communicate, they say. We met back on October 19th, and we discussed our respective positions. And the government identified certain documents that it said were personal to Trump, as reflected in their submission. But during that meeting between both parties, they say Trump's lawyers stated generally its position regarding personal records under the act. Both parties acknowledged that their positions regarding personal versus presidential could be waived by the incumbent administration, and whether it could would require further briefing to the court. So they had a meeting and they're sort of loosely talking about these issues. But they say the log that was presented by the government here yesterday does not accurately reflect Trump's position as we discussed in the October 19th meeting. These shady prosecutors, man. Can you believe this crap? They just, that's whatever he said. We just type it all in there. And they just send it in. They say the government submission mischaracterizes Trump's position as to the following documents, a whole list of them. Document 8, Document 9, 11, and 12, and 13. And so therefore, we must clarify Trump's position accordingly. As to Document 8, Trump asserts a claim of privilege. Same with 9. They say 9, Trump is not asserting any privilege, but we did not agree that these documents should be designated presidential. So their list is not even right. Document 12, Trump asserts claims of executive privilege. Same with 13. 15, as the parties agree to personal records, right? We have this distinction between personal records and presidential records. We agree there is no further matter to resolve. As the parties agree to the personal records designation, there is also no further matter to resolve. They're saying if those are Trumps, they're Trumps. Now, the defense acknowledges, they say, we apologize for any confusion that the multiple filings from the respective parties cause. Again, plaintiff's counsel, meaning Trump's lawyers, was surprised that the government did not attempt to confirm the contents of its log to ensure the parties' positions were accurately represented. Wow, these prosecutors are something else. It's pretty amazing. So, for example, let me get like a very basic example. There's a procedure in criminal law called a motion to continue. You've got a pretrial conference coming up. We've got a scheduling conflict. Defense attorney's going to be in trial. Prosecutor's having a baby, whatever. We can't do it on that day. We need a motion to continue. It's just a rescheduling, just like you reschedule a lunch. Before you file even that, you reach out to the prosecutor and you say, hey, what's your position on these things? And then you include that in the motion. I talked to the prosecutor. He doesn't object to this. You put that in there. And you confirm these things. The prosecution apparently didn't do that. They just said, well, this is what they say about 15. I think he said it was a presidential, no privilege. And it doesn't matter to us anyways. We're the DOJ. Special master's going to be gone as soon as the 11th Circuit comes down anyways. And so what do we care? And so just type it in, send it in. And they did. They didn't even show it to them. So the defense says, Judge, hello, what the hell? The above discrepancies could have been addressed prior to any submission. We will be happy to represent Trump's positions ourselves, and we'll confer with the defendant for a briefing schedule on the substance of those arguments. And going forward, they say Trump's counsel will not assume that orders requiring submissions, quote, from the parties means a jointly drafted document. Oh, yes, that's just so good. So good. Oh, it's so good. Sorry, Judge, I'm using your language. You said from the parties. You didn't get anything from the parties. You got something from the prosecution that said it was from the parties, but they never even showed it to us in the first place. Those scumbags. And so he's quoting them as he's saying, in the future, we're just going to consider your orders that when you say from the parties to just not mean what you say. Oh, that's good. I like that right there. Good stuff. Because the judge was doing the same thing to them, right? The judge just did that to them. I don't know if you saw this or caught that, but let me just show you again. He said here, this is from the judge. He says, I know you're sending me stuff in the docket, but deadline was yesterday and you didn't object. You didn't bring any of those things. So he says, as I said, right? He's saying, as I wrote, follow my language is what the judge is saying. Follow it. I wrote it. Don't question my language. And so they're kind of shoving that down his face again. They're saying, okay, Judge, yeah, we were following your language. We presumed when you said from the parties, you meant from the parties. The prosecution didn't do that. They just sent it from the prosecution. They didn't include us in it. So I guess if you're not going to scold them, if you're not going to tell the prosecution that they should send us copies, then we'll just interpret your rules the opposite of what you wrote. Beautiful. Love it. Outstanding. Great work from James Trusty. Clearing the record on this, because it sort of looks like that they were getting scolded by the judge, right? The judge said, oh, you missed a deadline and you're supposed to get this thing filed. And there's a bunch of knuckleheads on Twitter who are making that argument right now. Oh, look at Trump's lawyers. They can't even file any documents on time. They're all missing deadlines and blah, blah, blah. No, these corrupt prosecutors didn't even show them the filing before it got submitted. Jerks. What a joke. Anyway, so that's from the government prosecutors. And we have now, we've got a couple more stories before we wrap it up and take a look at your super chats. But apparently there's more leaks because the DOJ is extremely, extremely leaky. The Department of Justice continues to drip news out to the Washington Post. They tell us that they don't do this, but they do very conveniently week after week, right during election season. They report in an exclusive that they got directly from the DOJ. Nobody else got it. They've got inside people over there. They write that Mar-a-Lago apparently had classified papers involving secrets about Iran and China. We'll see. They write that some of the classified documents that were recovered by the FBI include highly sensitive intelligence about Iran and China. Now, they said the same thing about North Korea, but those turned out to be letters, evidently, that, as far as we can tell, don't have any nuclear materials in them, but we don't know. According to people familiar with the matter, they say that this, if shared with others, could expose intelligence gathering methods that the U.S. has kept hidden from the world. At least one of the documents seized by the FBI describes Iran's missile program, according to these people, all of them speaking on condition of anonymity. Other documents described as a highly sensitive intelligence work aimed at China, they said. All right. Unauthorized disclosure could risk the country. People aiding U.S. intelligence efforts could be damaged. Classified materials are considered among the most sensitive ever recovered. And all of this is on the back of him being subpoenaed. Trump claimed that there was no wrongdoing. He denied all of it in an interview, saying that he can think about declassifying things and it does it. Who could ever trust a corrupt, weaponized agency like NARA, Trump said. True. It's a great point. Some of these materials were received by the corrupt FBI, and so you see the story. Now, it's just, right, they take one little newsy bit and they write a whole article about the president, and every single bit is just meant to sort of castigate him and put him in a bad light, which is what they do. Trump responded to some of this stuff on True Social. He said, the FBI and the Department of Justice, which paid a man $200,000 to spy on me and offered a $1 million bounty to try and prove a totally made up and fake dossier about me, saying they went down in flames. They are now leaking nonstop on the document hoax to the fake news, which is what they did. They sent this over to the Washington Post. He says, who could ever trust a corrupt, weaponized agency like NARA, who disrespects our Constitution and Bill of Rights to keep and safeguard any records, especially since they've lost millions and millions of pages of information from previous presidents? Also, who knows what NARA and the FBI planted into the documents or subtracted from the documents? Saying, we'll never know, will we? Donald Trump on True Social fighting back against the FBI and their corrupt raid of his residence. We'll continue to follow. We'll see what the 11th Circuit has to say about this when they make a ruling. We know the U.S. government is already appealing this. They do not want the special master refereeing over this case. They say, we're the DOJ. We are perfect the way we are. Leave us alone. But we will continue to cover it and follow it. I hope you join us as we do. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, we covered a lot of ground on that one, didn't we? And we hit some serious news. I mean, it was a busy Friday. We talked about that on our morning walk and talk today. And I forgot to mention at the start of the show, hey, by the way, there are several YouTubers who are going through a little bit of a strike struggle right now. So shout outs to The Legal Mindset, who was a very big friend of this channel when we got our strike. The Legal Mindset, I posted this on Twitter and I posted about this on the morning video today. But he's suffering a strike. They went back in the YouTube history and they found a video from 4 months ago and they gave him a strike for that. We also saw that the Legal Vices caught a strike too. They're sort of going through the entire niche and just, get out of here. And so they're getting strikes and we'd ask you to support them. I linked to their channels. I'll add the links after the live stream here, but I linked over to them. Please go support them. Please follow them on Twitter. Join them on Locals. You know, when you get a strike, you can't even communicate with the people who, you know, your audience. You can't even post. And so I want to make sure that anytime that this, you know, happens, that we encourage you to know that, right? They got struck. Legal Mindset got struck. The Legal Vices got struck. So go follow them on Locals. Go follow them on Rumble. There's a gentleman called Cool Frog who has a Rumble channel. He also got a strike. I think he might have just moved right over to Cool Frog's over on Rumble. And so we talked about that on the morning video today. All of their channels are linked in there, certainly, which is public, but totally ridiculous, you know, and YouTube is just going down the list. So support your local content creators out there. And if you know anybody who sort of, you know, in their audiences, let them know what happened and where to find them, because I think it's going to get worse and we all have to support one another as this carries on. So support them, my friends. But now let's see what you have to say, because I saw a couple super chats come in and we will wrap it up with your comments before we jump on over to the Locals after party. But I'm pulling up those super chats because my capture didn't capture them. But here this one is. All right, our first one was from Oil Smoke Jones. We got Oil Smoke Jones at the start of the show. But he said, liberal lawfare reminds me of the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. They're using lawfare instead of violence. And they've been doing it for some time. Mark Elias, Democracy Docket, and all those guys, certainly. Andy P says, I got a ticket in Arizona. I'm taking the course to not get the 2 points. You're in the video, which is not, you know, I've had people tell me that before, but I never gave anybody permission to use anything. I never made videos for any courses. I've never done anything like that. I don't even know where it is or what course it's a part of. Somebody just took that and put it in their course. But, you know, it's probably very good knowledge. I'm glad that it's in there. Hopefully people are learning about it. but it's funny. I've also heard that my videos are used in trainings, police trainings, and other sorts of things. It's kind of a funny thing. Anyways, thank you, NDP. Drive safely out there, and good luck with the course. It's very boring, but it should be dismissed. Yeah, Andy, if you send me the course, I'm curious. I'd love to see the course. Yeah, Andy, you want me to send you? I'd love to see what course it is. Yeah, because nobody's ever even notified me of it. I've had people send me screenshots and stuff, but what is it? I'd love to see it. Yeah, it's funny. Anyways, this one is from Molly Dolly. Why are these political prosecutors not worried about being subject to investigations once power changes hands? They counting on squishy Republicans? Yes, of course. They're lifers at the DOJ. You get a government job, you can't go anywhere. What are you going to fire you? For what? Nothing. They're lifers. They're not going anywhere. They'll just wait it out until the Democrats are back in charge, and that will be the end of it. So, they're counting on squishy. And what are the Republicans going to do? Not much of anything. Yeah, not much of anything. They're not going to do anything about it. But all right, my friends, I think that was it for us on the day. And the show was a little bit early. So for those of you who are joining us late, I apologize that we missed you. But certainly, I encourage you to go back and rewind and get into the show. And also, if you missed the morning walk and talk was available. We talked about Steve Bannon today and, of course, the strikes, a little bit of Ethan Klein stuff. That's available. So if you're looking for a little bit of extra stuff to watch, that's what we do. We do that every day on our locals community member board, where we post the walk and talks and sort of carry on the conversation before and after the show. And so if you want to join us over there, we are hopping off right now and going over for the after party. So head on that direction while we close it up here. But that's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we'll be in about 2 minutes. We have RR Law Group. That's my law firm, R&R Law Group, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have an amazing team of people dedicated every day to helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. We have an amazing team. Honestly, we help people with everything: traffic, domestic stuff, drug stuff, felony stuff, all of it, everything and anything in between. We work on it. We're very good at what we do. We have a lot of passion behind the work. 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com is the place to be if you need help. And we appreciate your referrals. Also, I want to say thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. Shout outs go to Vienticus Prime, K Bean, Just Cause, Lean, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, along with Gio and Henry, who swing by from time to time. This is our last month for our Spotlight supporters. These were people who supported the show with a little extra monetary love. It's going to be going away because we're going to be making some changes on the program that I'm working on, but I'll unveil those later. But thank you to Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at qsimple.com. And John, head over to QSimple. John owns QSimple, but I'm telling you to head over to qsimple.com to learn a little bit more about what John does. But that, my friends, is it for us here on the YouTube and the live streams. We're going to continue the stream over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, because we've got comments, we've got chats, we've got a lot to attend to. And hopefully, I hope to see you there. But if not, we will be back here on Monday, to do it all again. We've got a big weekend ahead. Always a good time to unplug, recharge those batteries, spend time with friends and family, get outside, get some sunshine, all that fun stuff. Because we've got to get back here next week to do it all again. And I need to see you here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, a beautiful weekend, my friends. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye. All right, locals, I'm coming up soon. We're waiting for the YouTube stream to continue. And now it's going, and so we're going to